Imagine Earth as a giant survival video game. In that scenario, humans begin as players facing a major handicap. Human beings lack innate protections, have limited movement capabilities at birth, and the childbirth process involves severe pain, frequently necessitating help to bring the infant into the world. And what of a newborn that comes into existence following such a harrowing experience? Unlike numerous mammal species that become mobile soon after being born, human babies are unable to hold up their own heads for nearly 12 months. According to natural selection, humans ought to have gone extinct ages ago, biologically speaking. They are the most inferior. We will now examine how they escaped extinction and ultimately ascended to global supremacy. In the African savanna, a giraffe remained standing during the delivery of its calf. Within 60 minutes of birth, a young giraffe can manage to get up onto its legs with difficulty. Zebras and wildebeests exhibit similar behavior as they are preyed upon every day by lions and cheetahs. Nature dictates that any creature unable to flee soon after birth will quickly become vulnerable to predators. Most mammals are capable either of walking on their own soon after being born or of holding tightly to their mothers to ensure survival. Human labor, on the other hand, is completely distinct. The mother becomes soaked with perspiration. Persistent cries and moans echo throughout the room. Medical staff care for her while devices monitor her heartbeat. On certain occasions, surgical intervention is required to deliver the infant. And what of a child who emerges from this trial? It lacks the strength to raise its head. Rolling over requires roughly 90 days, and crawling on its own takes more than half a year. The ability to walk does not appear until approximately 12 months, which from a natural perspective classifies the human infant as premature, nearly resembling a fetus in its developmental stage. Evolution generally prioritizes efficiency, but human birth is notably wasteful of energy. This process inflicts potentially fatal agony on the mother, and the child stays dependent for multiple years, rendering it the least energy-efficient phenomenon in the natural world. How did this situation arise? In order to comprehend this lack of efficiency, we must examine events that occurred millions of years ago. Approximately 4 to 6 million years back, the predecessors of humans made a crucial choice. They abandoned walking on 4 limbs and adopted an upright bipedal gait. Walking upright released the hands for tool usage, which brought about quick brain growth. A chimpanzee's cranial volume is about 24.41 cubic inches, equivalent to 400 cubic centimeters, while a modern human's has attained around 85.43 cubic inches, equivalent to 1,400 cc, more than 3 times that amount. But walking on 2 legs came with a high evolutionary price. The human pelvis was entirely restructured. 4-legged animals have a wide pelvis that is poorly adapted for vertical weight support. Therefore, the human pelvis developed to be more slender and sturdy. The difficulty lies in the fact that the baby has to go through this narrow pelvic passage, and the baby's head is 3 times bigger than a newborn chimpanzee's head. Considering this severe problem, how could ancient women, without hospitals or ultrasound, know they were pregnant? The solution was found in the stars. The moon's cycle, from one new moon to the next, runs around 29.5 days, whereas the average human menstrual cycle is about 28 days. They match up surprisingly well. Could this be a coincidence? Absolutely not. Over millions of years, humans resided outside, and the moon acted as their only reliable clock. The female reproductive system synchronized with that lunar pattern. Every month, ancestral women would look up at the heavens and monitor their own physical changes. If a full moon came and went, followed by another without any menstrual flow, it indicated that a new life was forming inside the uterus. An extraordinary object supports this: the Ashango bone, discovered in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Around 20,000 years in the past, an individual carved a sequence of evenly spaced marks into a baboon's leg bone. At first, researchers thought it was merely a tally tool, but the mathematician Claudia Zaslavsky put forward a different theory. The overall count of notches matches the moon's cycle exactly. She suggested that the bone belonged to a woman who used the notches to track lunar phases for monitoring menstruation and identifying pregnancy. Discovered in South Africa, the Lebombo bone is older, still a relic from around 37,000 years ago, with exactly 29 notches. This matches a lunar month precisely. Certain scholars argue that this is humanity's first calendar and, at the same time, could have functioned as the earliest pregnancy test. Instead of using ultrasound, they observed the moon. Rather than a test, they carved notches into bone. They identified pregnancy by tallying lunar cycles. Next, the body starts delivering a signal: morning sickness, that intense queasiness that afflicts even today's women. Morning sickness is not just a simple unease. From an evolutionary biology perspective, it is the mind's way of protecting the growing embryo. This acts like an urgent warning. It's no accident that morning sickness reaches its peak exactly in the early stages of pregnancy, when the baby's main organs are developing. During this crucial period, if the mother ingests dangerous foods, it can lead to serious harm to the fetus or even fatality. Imagine the ancient setting: no refrigeration, primitive cooking techniques. Meat spoiled rapidly, numerous wild plants were poisonous. Parasites and disease causing microbes flourished all around. Under these circumstances, if a pregnant woman ate any food, the danger of fetal deformity or miscarriage was considerable. So the brain took extreme steps. It amplifies the senses of smell and taste to an intense level, wiring an automatic refusal of anything even slightly suspicious. Bitterness sensitivity evolved because numerous natural poisons have a bitter taste. In the same way, the smell of meat triggers disgust due to the extremely dangerous toxins produced by protein decay. The body used nausea and vomiting as a warning signal for harmful substances. A fascinating study found a statistical link. Stronger morning sickness correlated with lower miscarriage rates and better fetal well-being. Even though it caused discomfort, that suffering had a function. Natural selection favored fetal survival over maternal comfort, resulting in intense morning sickness. Early humans initially calculated pregnancy using lunar cycles and verified it via morning sickness, but they desired more dependable techniques. Archaeological findings from Egypt circa 1400 BC demonstrate this quest. A woman in the Nile area who suspected pregnancy would put wheat and barley seeds into distinct bags and store them. Each day, she would apply her urine to the seeds. Germination within a few days signified pregnancy. No growth meant no pregnancy. Additionally, she included sex prediction. If wheat sprouted first, it would be a girl. Barley first, a boy. This appears to be superstition, yet remarkably, scientists repeated this test in 1963 and discovered it was quite precise, approximately 70% accuracy. While the sex prediction was wrong, the pregnancy test was reasonably dependable. The reason was hormonal. Estrogen increases dramatically in pregnancy and is eliminated in urine, which prompts seeds to sprout. The ancient Egyptians, living 3,400 years ago, were unaware of hormones. Yet via constant experimentation, they empirically found that this method was effective. Lacking a scientific context, they still obtained results that were scientifically sound. Probably, comparable efforts existed thousands of years before Egyptian civilization. By observing physical reactions such as nausea from certain plant odors or drooling when seeing particular fruits, early humans created their own pregnancy detection techniques. Because no written records exist, we cannot be sure, but prehistoric women certainly had their own methods of diagnosis. People have always been inquisitive about their bodies. Morning sickness served as a safeguard for the fetus, yet it had a major drawback. Inadequate nutrition led to the mother's physical decline. Minerals presented a specific difficulty. Building the baby's bones and blood demands large amounts of calcium and iron, but morning sickness made eating meat and fish difficult. As a result, the mother's body pulled calcium from her skeleton and took iron from her bloodstream to supply the fetus. Thus, many women suffered from loose teeth and fragile bones after giving birth. Currently, mothers can easily prevent this by taking iron and calcium supplements, but prehistoric women did not have those alternatives. For survival, they found remedies in surprising places. That source was the ground underfoot dirt. expectant mothers eating soil. This behavior appears shocking to modern minds, but it has continued for tens of thousands of years in numerous cultures around the world. Academics call this geophagy, the intentional eating of soil. In Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, and even rural areas of the southern US, pregnant women have historically looked for and consumed specific kinds of dirt. This is not just superstition. Scientific research backs this habit. Certain clays are rich in minerals like iron, calcium, zinc, and magnesium. When morning sickness interfered with regular eating, soil acted as a mineral supplement. In fact, tests on clays eaten by pregnant women in parts of Africa showed high iron content. The body instinctively searched for lacking nutrients. Yet soil was not just a nutritional boost, it had a more essential role. That role is absorbing toxins. The tiny particles of clay behave like sponges, soaking up poisons in the gut and removing them from the system. Recall the diet of prehistoric times: raw flesh, foods about to spoil, and unknown wild vegetation. These factors established ideal circumstances for toxins to accumulate within the intestines. Being pregnant during that era was especially dangerous. In the initial 3 months, the growing embryo is extremely vulnerable to toxins. Clay would soak up these dangerous compounds, stopping them from getting to the unborn baby. Contemporary medicine uses this identical principle. Are you familiar with smecta, a drug prescribed for severe diarrhea or foodborne illness? Its key component is exactly clay. The mechanism relies on a naturally occurring mineral called diosmectite, which attaches to poisons and microbes in the gut and subsequently removes them from the system. The behavior that expecting mothers intuitively performed countless millennia ago is today being enhanced and sold by a drug manufacturer. Of course, they didn't consume random dirt. Through experimentation, ancient women discovered which kinds were harmless and beneficial. They ingested clay dug from a specific depth at a designated location, and this knowledge was passed down from mother to daughter through many generations. Markets in certain regions of Africa continue to sell clay that is meant for pregnant women. This treatment has been validated over countless millennia. Nausea during pregnancy functions as an evolutionary protective mechanism, while clay serves as a natural dietary aid. In combination, these two resources enabled ancient mothers to protect both themselves and their fetuses. Nevertheless, the greatest obstacle still loomed: the occurrence at the conclusion of the 10-month journey, childbirth. For human beings, this represented the most taxing ordeal of the species. In other mammals, delivery is fairly simple since the pelvic opening is wide enough and the baby's head passes through effortlessly. People, in contrast, are unique. Human childbirth is the most dangerous, painful, and protracted among all mammals. What causes this? I've discussed this previously. Because our ancestors adapted to bipedalism, the pelvic structure grew more compact, and at the same time, growing intelligence led to larger brains. Both of these elements, this situation causes a dilemma. Allow me to demonstrate clearly. The average head circumference of a human infant at birth is roughly 13.78 inches, equivalent to 35 centimeters. Yet, the tightest section of the pelvic passage it has to go through measures merely about 3.94 inches, equivalent to 10 centimeters. This is analogous to forcing a large melon through an opening the size of a small citrus fruit. Chimpanzees do not encounter this problem. Their offspring's head size is under half the width of the female's pelvic opening, making birth unaided. But in people, the infant's cranium is almost identical in dimension to the passage it must navigate. The canal is so narrow that there is zero margin for error, not even by 0.04 inches, equivalent to 1 millimeter. You may question, perhaps contemporary mothers have better nutrition, leading to bigger newborns. Wouldn't ancient babies have been tinier? That is a reasonable theory. At present, the typical baby at birth weighs approximately 6.61 pounds, equivalent to 3 kilograms. Yet, according to primate body scaling, roughly 4.41 pounds, equivalent to 2 kilograms, would be normal. Nutritional improvements have indeed increased birth weight. But the actual problem is not in weight, but rather in cranial dimensions. Analysis of a Neanderthal baby skeleton, about 40,000 years old, unearthed in France, uncovered a remarkable observation. The infant's brain volume was about 24.4 cubic inches, equivalent to 400 cc, exactly the same as that of a present-day human neonate. Scientists concluded that this figure indicates an upper boundary set by evolution for labor. For no less than 500,000 years, people have faced the difficulty of pushing a sizable cranium through a narrow pelvic ring. A watermelon. The situation of needing to go through an aperture the size of a lemon was the same in ancient eras. As a result, human babies perform an impressive twisting of the head during birth. They are not born straight. Rather, it is like opening a bottle by pulling out the cork. The infant must come out using a rotating movement. The head initially goes in at an oblique angle, then turns 90 degrees halfway through the pelvic region, and twists once more when the shoulders traverse. If not for this complex rotation, the child would get stuck in the delivery passage and would be impossible to birth. This method of labor is unique to humans, not seen in other primates, and it introduces an extra problem. Because of the turning motion, the newborn comes out with its back toward the mother. Among other primates, the baby arrives facing ahead, allowing the mother to extend her arms, grab it, and deal with the umbilical cord. But if a human mother tries to give birth unassisted, tugging on the baby would force its neck to extend too far backward, risking injury to the spinal column. This physical configuration implies that a mother is unable to safely bring forth her child without assistance. During prehistory, this virtually always ended in death. In solitary childbirth scenarios, complications such as the baby getting stuck in the birth canal, uncontrolled bleeding, the cord wrapped around the neck, or a breech delivery, feet first, inevitably led to the death of both mother and infant. Human evolution granted us a large brain, yet it came at the price of forcing each mother to endanger her life. What was the way our species overcame this harsh situation? The answer was quite simple. Recognizing the deadly outcomes of giving birth in isolation, humans developed a different approach rather than delivering alone, relying on help from another individual. That was the moment the earliest medical procedure in human history appeared. A woman in prehistoric times was never by herself while in labor. When the baby's head started to appear, a hand would guide it gently. If a shoulder got stuck, the hand would rotate it cautiously. And if the cord was around the neck, it would be quickly untangled. That hand was the midwife's. She was the first medical professional, a guardian who preserved the lives of mothers and babies for tens of thousands of years. Anthropologists call this practice mandatory midwifery. This suggests that midwifery was compulsory, not a choice. For other primates, having help during childbirth is only beneficial. But for humans, the absence of such help results in fatality. According to fossil remains and studies of pelvic shape, the culture of midwifery likely began in the time of Homo habilis around 2 million years ago. Thus, it is one of the oldest professions in human history. The midwife's role extended beyond just helping with delivery. She functioned as a walking repository of expertise acquired from attending many births, understanding the best birthing positions, the appropriate moment and technique for cutting the umbilical cord, and the herbs to use for excessive bleeding. This knowledge was passed down by word of mouth well before writing existed. It represented the most ancient method of medical education in human history. But an interesting question arises. Why is it that only human women live for many years after menopause? Most female mammals do not live long once they can no longer reproduce. From an evolutionary standpoint, it is advantageous for them to direct the resources required for survival to their young. Yet modern humans frequently reach their 80s or 90s, even though menopause occurs in their 50s. They continue living for another 3 to 4 decades after becoming infertile. Certainly, some audience members might think for a moment, weren't prehistoric humans usually dead by age 30 or 40? They may suppose that those people couldn't have lived long enough to be grandmothers. That's accurate. The commonly referenced average lifespan for early humans is roughly 30 years. However, there is a scary statistical trap concealed in this number. In that period, infant deaths shortly after birth or before turning 5 was so frequent that they dramatically lowered the average lifespan. People who made it through the dangerous stage marked by predators and disease frequently lived vigorously into their 60s and 70s. This means that even in the harsh wilderness, grandmothers with grey hair definitely existed. Why would evolution allow such seeming waste? The answer is connected to grandchildren. Evolutionary biologists call this the grandmother hypothesis. After menopause, when a woman helps her daughter give birth and jointly raises the grandchildren, those grandchildren have a much higher chance of survival. Genetically, it turned out to be more beneficial to put resources into current grandchildren than to have more children. Research on traditional societies in Africa and Asia has shown that babies had a much higher chance of survival in homes where grandmothers were present alongside the family as opposed to those without them. Grandmothers contributed much more than merely supervising the kids. She had accumulated decades of knowledge in childbirth and child rearing, precisely aware of which herbs aid maternal recovery and the proper way to treat an infant with a fever. When breast milk was not enough, what substitute nourishment could be provided? During pre-literate eras, the grandmother's memory effectively functioned as the community's storehouse of medical wisdom. The availability of midwives and grandmothers was crucial for humanity to surmount the natural hazards of childbirth. Paradoxically, the perils of childbirth actually strengthened ties among human groups. Through accomplishing together what no single person could accomplish alone, our forebears perfected collaboration as a means of survival. And within the babies delivered by these hands, another hidden evolutionary truth was concealed. The very fact that human newborns enter the world in such a completely dependent state was the very foundation of civilization. The infant who came into existence thanks to the work of midwives and grandmothers. However, anyone seeing such a newborn for the first time would probably have the same thought: is this actually okay? He is unable to raise his own head. He cannot even clearly fix his gaze. He lacks the ability to intentionally move even one finger. Is this being genuinely a finished product? Precisely. It is not a completed entity. A human baby is basically a fetus that has left the uterus too early. In comparison to other primates, a human baby needs about 1 month to turn over, 5 to 6 months to crawl, and a whole year to walk on its own. Why do humans come into the world in such an undeveloped condition? The explanation has already been given. Because the pelvic opening is too small to permit any more weighting. If the brain developed any further, the head would be too large to emerge through the birth canal. So evolution came up with a strange trade-off. Push the baby out before its brain has completely matured. Biologists call this state secondary altriciality. It describes an organism that ought to have stayed inside the uterus longer, but was expelled prematurely due to bodily limitations. The contrast grows even more remarkable when put into numbers. A baby chimpanzee's brain is approximately 40% of the size of an adult chimpanzee's brain. Upon birth, it is already almost halfway developed. But the brain of a human infant is just around 25% of that of an adult human, a mere 1/4. The remaining 75% has to mature outside the uterus, directly interacting with the outside world. Yet here, a miracle occurs. What appeared to be a deadly flaw became humanity's biggest advantage. If the brain had completely developed within the uterus, it would have operated purely based on a genetic blueprint. Such a brain would be confined by instinct, without flexibility. However, the brain of a human baby, which arrives in the world in a fairly empty state, is essentially distinct. Similar to a blank storage device, the infant's mind soaks up information from its surroundings, everything from the maternal vocalizations to the elderly woman's lullabies, conversations within the community, and stories shared by the fireside. These all leave enduring traces on the child's psyche. When born, the brain of a young chimpanzee already possesses basic configurations, enabling quick self-sufficiency, yet limiting the ability to acquire new knowledge. Conversely, the human baby's brain is akin to an almost untouched slate. Although becoming independent requires more time, it can be continuously molded to fit its environment. An infant delivered in the African grasslands grows a mind perfectly attuned to that ecosystem. Similarly, a baby arriving in the Arctic plains adapts its brain to its unique surrounding. This is the ultimate form of flexibility, and during this prolonged period of maturation, the child dedicates total effort to acquiring just one ability: speech. Humans have a language far more complex than any other creature, in part because of this lengthy learning phase. For a number of years, the baby quietly watches its world, pays attention to sounds, and identifies regularities. If this stage were absent, the development of human speech would have been impossible. Because of the pelvic limitations, the human baby is born underdeveloped and developed into a speaking being. According to nature's rules, humans should have disappeared ages ago, but this apparent disadvantage passed down to us became our greatest strength, raising us to the top of the primate order. Arriving into the world as the most vulnerable allowed us to acquire knowledge at a phenomenal speed. And since we were unable to deliver or raise offspring without assistance, we created an intensely interconnected social structure, more unified than any other species. However, picture if people at the moment of birth already had the full ability to stand and move on their own. We would have merely been another among the numerous animals traveling the plains. This lethal weakness, combined with the unity that closed that divide, transformed the entire situation. This truly functioned as the exceptional advantage that allowed humans, who were positioned at the lowest level of the rankings, to finally triumph in this harsh battle for existence. Just as our ancestors succeeded by helping one another millions of years ago, I likewise survive in the harsh world of YouTube because of the unwavering backing from your subscriptions and likes. If today's story captured your interest, kindly become part of my community. For the following installment, I'll return with intriguing knowledge that will fully absorb your thoughts.